Prince Vhordrais Dragon. A centerpiece miniature that has to be done justice. But I wanted this to be a very atmospheric paint job, so the approach was, to be honest, very simple. Just smash on some colors and see what comes out. I knew that I will mainly use blue and magenta-like colors to sell the effect of it being a dark moonlit night. So in this tutorial I'll show you how I painted this Dragoneth and my thoughts behind the steps. After it took me way too long and too much coffee to build this big dragon, I started painting. I went full on wet blending mode for the base coat, going from a blue to deep magenta and even up to light flesh for the wings. I knew I could have just started with an airbrush, but I choose a classical way on this one again, since I want my tutorials to be recreatable if someone chooses to do so. Just today I learned that somebody has used my inspiration on Fulgrim to create an absolute masterpiece. And to be honest, that's why I do this. At this point I did not really have a feel for the miniature and how I wanted it to look like. So I just went brighter the closer I got to the root of its fingers and painted each flight skin by itself. And when I was done, I figured that I could paint the rest of the dragon in a similar manner, so I just smashed on some purples, magentas and blues, but in general the idea was to have the blues more towards the top of the dragon. Or Dragoneth. For all the bits that hang out somewhere, as well as the tongue and the inside of the loose skin, I went for just magenta at first, since I wanted to see how the image in my head will match the painting on the dragon itself. I like the contrast of magenta and blue very much, and I thought, if I have a dark blue, I should go for a bright magenta or even pink, since it is not only the color itself but the brightness that will sell the effect and a good looking piece in the end. Today I tried out another camera angle, so feel free to tell me if you like it or not. And if you like content like this, I want to encourage you to leave a like or a subscription. So I knew I don't wanted to highlight every centimeter of this miniature, but really focus on the head and front side of the wings at first. I slowly increased the brightness on the magenta parts. I wanted this to be a very atmospheric paint job, so I went a bit back and forth with some of these color tones, sometimes highlighting something that's blue with a bright magenta and the other way around. I knew if I had painted all the edges on this one, it would be way too difficult to read it as a mini, as the amount of detail here is just overwhelming. There's not a single square centimeter on this miniature where nothing happens. Miniatures like this are the reason I use these long-handled brushes, because it's very easy to reach every part of the miniature. And I also like the additional weight behind these. I only picked out the biggest of openings to highlight them, because if I wouldn't have done that, it would kinda look strange. For the horns and claws and even the bones, I went for my trusted mix of a dark rust as a base coat. I needed a contrast here, and even though at this point he looked very dark, I started visualizing this paint job and had a better idea in mind. I picked out each bone, spine, horn and spike by itself and painted it brown. And here you see me cleaning up the wings. And now we come to the part that turned out making the most fun, as this was really new to me. I know I wanted to create something very different here. I wanted these stones to look like they belong in a magical fantasy night setting, but still to be read as stones. So I covered the entire wall segment or whatever this is with a dark blue and purple, mixed in with a bit of black so that they don't have the same color as the dragon himself. By the way, do you say himself or itself? Is a dragon a it or a he or a she or whatever? My first try was to dry brush the highlights on these edges. In my mind, the moon would shine from behind the dragon, so it made sense to me to highlight them at this point. I was not quite happy how the color turned out yet, so I covered the whole stony thing here with chayesh purple to darken it down completely. It just should have the slightest hint of purple, and I figured out that this paint would do the job. And while the chayesh purple dries, I went on with the bone and gave them a coat of burnt red. The contrast between the blue and the brown really fits this paint job in my opinion. Somehow giving this mini more life even if it's undead. When the wall was ready, I started painting with some turquoise-like colors, mixing them on the fly. At this point I knew I was going to say in the video, the further I go up, the brighter I get. And it worked really well. The blue looked good, but I wanted a bit more color here, so I mixed a bit of ghost green in there for the edges, and even if they are very bright right now, the high contrast really works well. For the base, I followed my own guide, which is linked here by the way, and when I found some gravestones, I repeated the same process I had here on the wall segment, which I thought was a very nice addition and practice. I wanted to create atmosphere here and I wanted to be done relatively fast. And while you see me painting, I want to make you aware of my Patreon, where you can get access to my Discord server, vote for content, or just be a part of this very small but cool community. For the front side of the wall, I just went for a very easy and rough edge highlight around each stone. I went for no actual pattern here other than having two sides bright and a third one in a little darker edge highlight. One does not have to be very neat here, as this is still stone and should have some texture. And for the last step I went for a 50-50 mix of ghost green and white. When I was happy with them, I painted the rest of the horns and bones with a very loose mix of burnt red and Elfic flesh. These colors mixed together create something like a pinkish undertone, which fitted the bone structure very well in my opinion. the head or the skull of the Dragoneth got the most attention. Even going up to a 50-50 mix of Elfic flesh and white for the bone structure around his nostrils and cheekbones. And we are doing the same with the teeth, and of course, all the other bones. And here you see me wet blending these colors together, going from a brown over to a more or less skin-like pink up to a bone-like beige. Just use burnt red and add more and more Elfic flesh into the mix to create this amazing transition of color. The next day. I wanted to highlight the Dragoneth, but it turned out to be very tricky. At first I had to match the color of the day before, and then I also had to brighten it up for a highlight color. But my thought was, if I put the same mix of colors at multiple spots, it will work. So I once again mixed magenta, dark sea blue and added more light flesh into it to create a highlight color. Then I picked out some parts, especially on the left leg, back and top of the wings, that would catch the light coming from top down. Painting instead of following a recipe. Words used by Roman Lapart, which I can say I just agree on. Working within the limits of a recipe will make you paint a marine after a marine, but can you be really creative with this? I really don't know. I know I wanted to be creative with this one, and now that I see the dragon here in front of me, I say it was the right choice. I don't know when, but somehow I ended up liking this overly stylized fantasy vampires who walked under a moon that illuminates the night in a very dark and eerie purple light. I would recommend pointing these scales or horn skin or whatever this is out each by itself so it looks neat in the end. I know I said it's not about neatness with this style of painting, but we don't need to be reckless. For his eyes I had one thing in mind since I started this one. Blue. Do you remember the old Warcraft trailer with this undead dragon? I wanted that blue. So I created a blue OSL-like glow with Abyssal Turquoise and blue-green. I did the same thing with the inside of his mouth, but unfortunately the footage is very blurry and doesn't help anyone, but it is the same process and the same style. Go for a big brush and cover the entire back of his mouth and throat with Abyssal Turquoise and just go brighter on the go the closer you get to the end of it. I hope you liked this little different tutorial, and if you did, I once again want to encourage you to leave a like or subscribe to this channel. The rest of Prince Vhordrai will come out in a few days and we are going to see each other in the next one.